Consumers want to know the facts about the products they buy, but America's agricultural landscape is not easy to navigate. Between different companies, scientific advancement, government regulations, advertisement campaigns, and an unhealthy amount of myth and misconception, anyone would be hard-pressed to make sense of it. That's where Real Ag comes in. From the producers who make your food, to the store where you buy the final product, and everything in between. This is Real Ag. Now, here's your host, Kyle Bauer.
We're all familiar with the rural lifestyle here in Kansas, and none more than the dairy farmer, always requiring intense labor and facing the challenge of keeping the farm in the family. The ability to utilize the latest technology has provided new opportunities for dairy operations. We'll visit a dairy that uses robotic milkers on this edition of Real Ag.
Production of Real Ag is made possible by
the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by farmers.
What government agencies are involved in dairy?
The FDA regulates and keeps tabs on all the dairy producers and the milk that's handled from the farm to the store. The Kansas Department of Agriculture is really tied into that. They're the ones that on the state level keep track of all the dairy farmers, so absolutely lots of regulations.
How many dairy farms are there in Kansas?
We have just under 300 dairy farms here in the state, so lots of farm families. Most of your smaller dairy farms are going to be in the eastern part of the state, where your larger dairies with the most amount of cows are going to be out in the western half. In eastern Kansas, there's some dairies as few as 50 cows, and then as you head more towards the western half of the state, you're talking several thousand cows. So it just varies. There's small dairy farm families, and then there's farms that have started out as a family farm and have developed more into a larger operation. So lots of different sizes and lots of different cows.
What is the economic impact of a local dairy farm?
Kansas has really grown in the last couple years in dairy and has contributed several $1 billion to the industry or to the economy here in Kansas. So very big growing dairy state, have a new milk plant going in the western half of Kansas that's really going to enhance the economy in that area. So lots of jobs, yes.
How is most milking done in Kansas?
Most milking is done by automation, either with milking machines and equipment or robotics. There are 2 dairies that have opened up in the last year that are milking with robots. There's a lot of positives towards the robotics. First off, it's going to make the family life of the dairy farmers a lot better. I don't know if people understand, but dairy farming is a 365-day-a-year job, twice a day at least. Some dairy farms are 3 times a day. And so that takes a lot away from your family time. There's a lot of stress on the family. They can't get away. It's hard to find people to milk for them. So by putting robots in, you're really increasing the quality of your family life. It gives you a little more flexibility.
How many cows do you have at the farm?
We have about 750 or so. That would be total animals. Then we have probably around 100 calves and young stock, up to about 400 pounds. So I guess 800 head total. About 650 are in lactation, and then we have 100 dry cows, between dry cows and pre-fresh heifers.
What is a dry cow?
A dry cow is a cow that has been in lactation before, and she's ended her lactation. We dried her off. She's getting ready to calve again. A pre-fresh heifer is a heifer that has not been milked before, so when she calves in, it'll be her first time.
If a cow gets sick, how is it treated?
It depends on the route of treatment we use. Depends on what the animal is sick with. I guess a common sickness that we have on most dairy farms would be mastitis, which is a mammary infection. We do treat those with antibiotics, and when we use antibiotics, we have to dump out the milk. We do not ship any milk that has antibiotics in it. I guess the dairy industry is pretty unique in the fact that we have to make sure that we have to withhold from milk and meat if that cow is destined for slaughter. So yeah, we have pretty strict guidelines of residues that we have to withhold from, and we follow those. With robots now, all we have to do is enter the information in the computer. The robot takes care of it. It's not like we have a huge group of 50 cows that are treated all the time, that are sick. I mean, it's usually only a handful. So dairy cows are housed in barns. Basically, we do it here because of our environment. We want to keep them dry, we want to keep them warm, we want to keep them cool in the summer, because all those stresses lower or decrease production. And they also cause disease and infections that we don't want.
When did you start using robotics, and what is that process?
Well, we started actually last year, basically a year ago. September 15th was the first day that we started in the robots. We have two main freestall barns here. We have the north shed and the south shed. The north barn we started, and then 10 days later we started the south building. So it was a lot of training, getting the cows to use robots, getting them acclimated to the new system where they didn't have to get milked if they didn't want to, but we encouraged them to until they kind of got used to the process.
The cows basically milk themselves. They go into the robot washes, cleans the teats and the udder, hooks them up to the milker, milks the cow, feeds the cow, and sends her out the door. So it's better for the family, and it's also better for the cow. She can come into the milker 2 or 3 times a day whenever she feels like, hey, it's time to be milked, and I want a little food. And so it's less stress on the cow too as well. So they're not on a rigorous schedule either. They can come in when they want to.
Basically, the first week we would bring every cow in 3 times a day to go through the robot and get milked. After a week, we had gates in and pens set up, so we have 3 robots per group. So we're using a third of the group basically per robot. After the first week was over, we took the gates down, 1 big pen, about 150 cows. Some of them were using it by themselves at that point. Others, we would have to go out and we call them fetch cows. Cows that had been away for basically 8 to 10 hours that hadn't been milked. So we'd go and we'd gather those up and we would push those through the robot again. It took about a solid 5 months of doing that before they really started rolling by themselves, going through. We still do some of that today. We normally have about 10 cows per pen now that we have to fetch. Mainly later lactation cows or early lactation cows that are just starting. So most of them that are in the system for a few weeks are good to go, and they know their way and they have their own routine now. So. Every cow has a collar, and in this collar there's a radio frequency chip. So in that chip is basically the cow's identification. The robot can read that chip, and we also have a reader in each of the barns that reads those chips. So when a cow enters the robot collects it's a little over 100 pieces of information on that animal as she enters. as far as time she gets milked, how much she gets milked, her activity, her rumination. There's a whole bunch of different things. And so then it basically stamps that, hey, this cow got milked at this time. So according to her production, we're going to not let her come back to be milked for anywhere from 4 to 12 hours. Some of our high producing cows, they get milked 5 or 6 times a day. Some of our low producing cows get milked once or twice. A lot of times she'll walk in and it will refuse her. So it'll just open the gates and let her out. She might try it again and again, and if it keeps refusing her, usually she'll go on and maybe try an hour later or something. But yeah, they once they learn what their routine is, they kind of get it down. So we actually have 3 computers with all the information on it, and then I keep a flash drive that I take home every night. So we do daily backups. We have had a power outage. We have battery backups for an hour power source. So basically if the power goes out, we have an hour to get it turned back on. And we have a generator here, so usually within 10 or 15 minutes we have power.
I think that by letting the cow come in when she wants to, the frequency of the milking will actually help keep the cow healthier as well.
Have jobs been lost due to the new technology?
Well, it depends on the situation or your area that you are farming in. For us, we were having trouble finding people to milk cows. It's not a very glamorous job. Not a lot of people want to do it. So it was more of a necessity for us. It did eliminate some jobs. We normally had, when we were milking 3 times a day through a parlor, we basically had 6 people. But because we lost help and couldn't find any help, we had to go to 2 times a day. So then we were down to 4 people a day milking. And so I guess, yes, it did eliminate jobs, but it filled jobs that other people didn't want to.
What do you feed dairy cattle?
Well, we grow all of our silages. We do grow some alfalfa hay. As far as dry grains, all that's bought. And some of the other products that fill out our ration, like cottonseed. We use a product called Sweet Bran. And then we use a dry corn Milo mix that's ground at the local elevator. So, but actually a dairy cow probably puts more energy in her body than a beef cow. The reason for that is to produce milk. You know, a couple of our groups are probably eating about 120 pounds of feed a day, compared to a beef animal that might just be out on pasture on grass. I don't know. I wouldn't even have a clue how much they would eat. But so yeah, our ration is formulated for production. You know, we got to have starch and protein in our diet to make milk. So we use a blend of corn silage, Sweet Bran, alfalfa haylage, alfalfa hay, then the dry corn and Milo ground mix and cottonseed. And that gets adjusted almost weekly for dry matter. If we see that our butter fat is dropping below what we want, we can adjust our ration for that to try and get that back up. So the milk cows are on a high energy feed, our dry cows are on a low energy feed, and our maternity barn or transition cows are in the middle of that.
What is raw milk?
Well, raw milk would be, I guess, just milk that's straight from the cow. The milk that we collect in the tank would be raw milk. It'd be milk that isn't pasteurized or homogenized. It is safe to drink. That's what our family used every day. Most dairy families went to the tank and got their milk. I'm sure someone who's never had it before, it might be a shock to their system, but it is safe to drink. So it's much sweeter. There's really no comparison. It's so much better.
How is milk pasteurized?
And pasteurization is where they heat milk to a high temperature. It's about 161 degrees for about 15 minutes. And that's going to kill any germs, bacteria that might be in the milk. That would be, your two top ones would be salmonella and listeria. Those can cause different ailments in people, sickness, and so pasteurization is really important. The FDA mandated it back in 1987 to help keep people consuming milk healthier. There are some places that still do allow for the raw milk sales. It just depends from state to state, but it cannot be off of the farm. It has to be on the farm. So that just varies from state to state. Homogenization is where they're going to break up the fat particles in the milk. That's the other part of the milk process. That's going to help keep the fat mixed within the milk. So those are two things that really make raw milk different than conventional milk. And so by doing the pasteurization process, you're not changing the quality of the milk. You're actually enhancing the quality of the milk by giving it a longer shelf life, and you're killing those germs and bacteria that are in the milk that can cause people to become sick.
Tell us how the milk is transported.
Every day, the same time of day. A tanker comes in and he will unload our bulk tank, and he takes it right to Kansas City where it gets unloaded, and within a few hours I believe most of our milk gets bottled for drinking milk, so it goes right into a gallon jug or a half-gallon jug or whatever, and probably within 48 hours it's on the store shelf.
Like I said before, milk is regulated from leaving the farm till it gets to you in the store. So that includes the transportation, that includes the processing plants. All of those things are regulated by the FDA. And again, the Kansas Department of Agriculture helps with those regulations with regular inspections of those trucks and processing plants. So like I said before, your milk is good and clean from leaving the cow to hitting the jug in the store. Most dairy farmers are very adamant about anything they use in their cows that could contaminate the milk. If a truck does become contaminated, say it would happen, they would dispose of that as a hazardous waste. So it would not reach the processing plant, it would not be processed with the regular milk, and it would definitely not be sold.
What is bovine growth hormone?
Bovine growth hormone, or bovine somatotrophin is another way they talk about it, is an artificial growth hormone that can be given to the cows in order to help them generate more milk. Now, 10 or 15 years ago, it was a pretty hot topic, and people were really interested in it and really talking about dairy farmers using it. And at that time, I believe there was quite a few dairy farms that did utilize it, but bovine growth hormone is actually it's a naturally occurring hormone in the cow. And so what they're doing is they add that hormone to the cow in order to increase her milk production. Now, in the state of Kansas, the dairy farmers pledge to not use BST or BG, or bovine growth hormone, anymore. And they actually get paid a premium for making that promise. And so, and I think dairy farmers, as they used BST, found out it was more of a high management tool, and it really took a lot of time from the dairy farm. And then with the negative reactions from the public, decided, maybe this isn't the way to go. And so most dairy farms do take that pledge to not use BST. They actually get a 50-cent per hundredweight bonus for signing that pledge. So it's good for them to do it.
Hormones are not added to milk. Any hormone in milk is naturally occurring. We don't use growth hormones. We're not looking to grow beef cows, so we don't use growth hormones.
What are some benefits of drinking milk?
Milk is probably one of the safest things you can drink. From the cow to the store, it's never touched by human hands. It's a good product for you to drink. It has lots of health benefits to it. Calcium being number one, protein, your vitamins, your different vitamins and minerals that are in milk. Milk has been shown to help people lose weight. It's a really good idea to drink milk before you have a meal. It also helps with indigestion and heartburn. Milk has a way of naturally coating the esophagus and the stomach to help your body not to have irritations from acidy foods. So it has lots of benefits to it.
The big push now is it's kind of a competitor with a product like Gatorade as far as replenishing your body after a workout. I think there's been a lot of study gone into the benefits of that now. So
I get so frustrated when I hear almond milk and soy milk. It's not milk. And I know the government classifies it as that, but first off, the taste. If anybody's ever had those milks, cow milk is definitely better tasting than those milks, and definitely a lot more health benefits, more natural health benefits than some of those other products. So yeah, don't drink that.
Automated milking systems has been around since the 1990s, but it's relatively new here in the Midwest. Farmers turning to robotics and other technologies represent the future of farming. We hope you've learned more about the dairy farm on this episode of Real Ag. Remember, you can see every program of this series by going to SmokyHillsTV.org. On behalf of the Real Ag crew, I'm Kyle Bauer, and this has been Real Ag.
Production of Real Ag is made possible by
the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by farmers.